You're listening to the Hunt Stealth Podcast with Ryan Uffens, the podcast where we dive headfirst into the wild. Whether you're an aspiring hunter or an adventurer seeking the untamed, together we'll explore the strategies and stories that lead to success in the great outdoors.
Folks, we're here today with Dylan Dawson with onX. He kind of heads up the Western big game with onX. Excited to have him on the show. Dylan, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a little while coming, and I'm excited to be here for sure. So thank you.
Yeah, we had a good chat over at the Hunt Expo. Seems like everybody's still trying to get unburied from that, play catch up to the normal day life of work and all that fun stuff there. Was that a good show for you guys? You guys do pretty well there?
Yeah, no, Hunt Expo's it's always a fun one. It kind of feels like a big family reunion in sorts, and get to put a few faces to the names and emails that we've exchanged throughout the last couple of years. So yeah, it's always a fun one. The show's good a lot. Fortunately, pretty much everybody who we talk to there already has onX, and they're already a user. So it's a lot of, hey, I wouldn't have killed this buck or this bull last year without onX. Thanks for doing what you do. Sweet, here's a free hat. Makes my job and my marketing and my life a heck of a lot easier. So yeah, it's a cool show though. It's good to connect.
Great, good to hear. Hey, tell us a little bit, if you would, just for the folks that aren't familiar with you and your background. How did you get started in the hunting industry side of things?
Yeah, so I've been with onX this August. It will be coming up on 10 years, which sounds crazy to say out loud. That was my first job within the hunting industry, quote unquote. At the time it was only 10 years ago, so I don't want to say I was a young kid, but I was 10 years younger and just trying to figure out what the heck I was doing in life and where I wanted to work and what I wanted to do.
You were early in your career. Yep,
exactly. So early 20s. And so kind of funny story how it all happened, actually. I was moving. I'm from Eastern Montana originally, and I was moving out to Western Montana where onX is founded at the time, where the only office, if you will, was, which is in Missoula, Montana. I was moving out here anyways, and I actually went in to update my chip. A lot of onX customers today don't realize we started out with GPS chips, so a tangible chip that you'd plug into your GPS unit. We had the phone app right around then, but it wasn't fully developed, and so a vast majority of onX customers were chip customers. So to update your chip, you'd have to plug it into your computer or download some software, update the chip that way, or just bring it into the office if you're local. So I happened to be visiting Missoula and brought my chip in and went in to update it. And a gal from the town I grew up in worked at onX. So we were catching up and just small talking while my chip was being updated. And somebody that same day, some customer service representative actually had put in their notice. And so they asked me if I was looking for a job. Not something that I was planning on doing, but to be truthful, I didn't really think that there was anywhere within onX that I would be qualified for, so I just wasn't really pursuing it. But I was like, yeah, actually I'm moving up here. What's the job? So after about 15 minutes of conversation, I started. So not a traditional start. Started out in customer service, and I was there for a year and a half to 2 years. Answered a ton of phone calls with product questions, just, hunt stories, you name it. I've talked to all the customers back then. And then I slowly transitioned onto the marketing side of things. So today, my job looks much different than when I started. I manage all of our Western big game ambassadors, a lot of our partnerships with different industry companies and businesses, as well as just kind of oversee the Western big game marketing day to day. So yeah, it's been 10 years and a pretty sweet 10 years.
That's awesome. Well, that's a fun story, to be able to just to stumble into a career there, go in, get a chip updated. Next thing you know, 10 years later, you're running, the Western big game marketing division. That's a testament to you for the work that you've done there. Them hiring a guy off the street coming in to get a chip updated, and now you're one of the big boys there. That's awesome. Super cool.
Yeah, no, it is cool. I joke, it's truthful, so it's not necessarily a joke, but the first couple years working there, I would go in during the winter and shovel snow on the sidewalk just because customer service was so seasonal that in the winter time we weren't getting a lot of phone calls. So to make sure I had enough hours to keep my job safe, I'd go in and shovel the sidewalks before work started. So a lot has changed in 10 years at Onyx. You know, we were relatively small, up and coming company at the time, and fast forward today, it looks a lot different around Onyx. It's pretty cool to go to a Western Hunt Expo and talk to thousands of people. And I think there was one person that I talked to at that show that didn't have the Hunt app on their phone. And they were a longtime chip customer, and they were pretty diehard. I only use my GPS. I'm only using the chip. But outside of that, you know, you're hard pressed to find anybody who doesn't use it, which is super cool.
Yeah. So we had just started talking at the show, but I had mentioned to you, like, I'm new to hunting, and Onyx was like the first app that we grabbed and downloaded. Like, funny story. The first time we used it, was my boy had sold his car and somebody had stolen his, not the air. What are anyway, they're the nice over ear headphones. The Apple ones. I forget what they are. Anyway, they're like all the rage. Anyway, someone had stolen them out of the car. Well, he could track the location of it. And he goes, I'm going to pull up Onyx. And he found the person's house, because you can find individuals, homeowners. And he called there, talked to the dad, and said that he had a pair of headphones that were stolen out of his car. Anyway, long story short, we tracked his headphones down thanks to Onyx. So not only can it help you, track down and make sure you're in the right location to take a big game animal, but it can also help in the recovery of theft of your personal product if you have a tracking system on it. But anyway,
Yeah,
kind of a funny.
pretty crazy.
I'm sure you've probably heard stuff like that before.
Yeah, I was just gonna say we've heard some pretty unique Onyx use cases throughout the years. That being one of them. Definitely a lot of like I lost my sunglasses in the woods, or my pistol fell out of the holster in the woods, and luckily I had a track on it, so I went back and found it, a week later. Those type of things, we hear those a lot as well. And then a lot of stories, which are my personal favorite, is every time we hear a story of like search and rescue using our product to help locate and find and aid in the recovery of, like whether it be missing persons or anything like that. We get quite a few of those as well, and those are my personal favorites. It's pretty cool having somebody come up and show you a photo of a big buck or bull they killed and say, without Onyx, it's likely I wouldn't have got this done, but without Onyx, would have been much tougher to find this person that was missing in the wilderness, and you name it, is probably the coolest stuff.
That's awesome. Dylan, for a lot of our audience is people that are new to hunting. Aside from it being a mapping system, like how would you explain it to somebody, and what are the benefits to new hunters to downloading this app and taking advantage of the tools that it offers?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of different ways to go about that. It's a great question. I would say the biggest thing is it turns your phone into a handheld GPS. A lot of people like to think of Onyx as an app on their phone, but what they're not necessarily thinking of is the value that it does, in the sense that it literally makes your phone a handheld GPS unit. So if you think of it that way, it's much more valuable than, well, it's an app on my phone that allows me to do X, Y, or Z. But essentially, we kind of joke internally here, and we haven't used this on much marketing external, but it essentially puts, like, we say 10 years of knowledge in your palms in like 10 minutes. That might be exaggerating a little bit, but honestly, in certain aspects and use cases, it's not. If you're going out on a hunt, or if you're going to an area that you've never been to, if you're e-scouting and getting a lay of the land, you're going to know so much more going into that particular hunt, or whatever you happen to be doing with it, by e-scouting and by marking some waypoints and sharing tracks and routes and whatnot amongst the other folks you're meeting up with. But yeah, just think of it like turning your phone into a GPS device. You'll see your GPS location at all times, with or without cell service. You can drop waypoints, obviously. so many things that we could rabbit hole into, like with waypoints, for example. Just to touch on the surface, you can change the colors. You can change between, I think it's like 60 some different custom icons for those waypoints. You can add notes to those waypoints. You can add photos to those waypoints. You can share those waypoints. You can add range radiuses to those waypoints. You can do custom wind direction for current wind direction on that waypoint, or ideal if you're like stand hunting. So just within waypoints, for example, there's so much you can do. Not to mention the routes and the GPS tracks and all that stuff. But you can share all that stuff with your hunting partners, or for me, like if I'm going out hunting solo, I'll send my wife a few waypoints of where I'm going to be, just so if I don't turn up and don't check in, they've got a couple spots of like, hey, I was going to camp here. Here's where I'm going to park my pickup, etc. And then, on top of that, there's just so much more data that you can dive into. You've got the hunting GPS boundaries for the units. You can change those by species for the states that do that. Of course, you got the private and public lands, which is why most customers get turned on to onX. Is it private property? Who owns it? Is it public property? How can I access it? We've got the roads, trails. We have slope, angle layers. You name it. There's a lot of cool stuff that we have included into the Hunt app over the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, I think the understanding the terrain, the options you guys have to kind of take a look at like the topography and things like that. Because a lot of people, if you haven't had the chance, if you're going into a new area, which is basically me every time I'm going, unless I'm going with somebody, I have no idea. It kind of gives me a lay of the land from above, like, bird's eye view. And then you can kind of dig in and kind of understand things a little bit better as you try and navigate and find, where you want to be. And like you said, if you get some folks that you're going up with and they can share their waypoints in that, it's like, or if you can't go up with a group at the same time they're going up, they can kind of send you, those waypoints so that you can find your way to them and be able to connect up at camp. So I think that's
a lot
of
different stuff. And as far as the terrain, obviously we have our topographic maps. That's what everybody's used to. We have 3D, especially using it on the computer for scouting is really cool. We also have 3D exaggeration. So what that does is you can put it in 3D, and then there's a slider bar where you can extrapolate up and exaggerate the 3D so it's a little bit more prominent. That's really cool, specifically in areas that maybe aren't super mountainous. I'm in Western Montana right now. There's a lot of elevation change, so 3D pretty much covers it. That being said, there's oftentimes you'll look at something in 3D and then you'll go look at it in real life and it's like, yeah, I was thinking it was going to be a little bit smaller than that. So it is nice sometimes to take that 3D exaggeration and just slide it up just a little bit, and it helps you get a better understanding of what it's actually going to look like in person. But Eastern Montana or some of the Midwestern states, areas that don't have a lot of topography, that 3D exaggeration is a super, super cool tool to help pinpoint, glassing spots or ridges to use for hiking, etc.
Awesome. I think that's great advice. Hey, tell me if you would a little bit, like, have you, like, a recent hunt that you've done that you've been able to use this on? I mean, is it an area that you've been in before? Was it a new area? Like, do you have anything that you could share?
Yeah, so I'll share one non-conventional for onX because we actually don't have Mexico mapped out, but the most recent one I just got back a couple weeks ago from a Mexico coos deer hunt. Again, for anybody who's not familiar, we have all 50 states plus Canada in onX, and that's as far as like the public lands and the data that we have. We've got actual data for those areas. Anywhere outside of that, the app still works. We just don't have like private property boundaries, etc. But I used the heck out of it down in Mexico. All the way from before going there, I was sent a GPX file and several different waypoints in a folder for where we were going to be hunting. So instead of individually, 2 or 3 years ago, you would have to individually share those waypoints. So if I wanted to show you 10 different waypoints, I'd have to tap on one, text it to you, send you the link, and then do that over and over and over. Now what we have is you can actually drop all of those into a folder. So name this one Mexico Coos Deer Hunt 2025. the GPX file for the land ownership boundary, plus I think there was like 15, 20 waypoints were in there. And then the individual texted it to me. I clicked on that and saved it. And now all of that content is right within my Hunt app. So although we didn't have private property boundaries built into the app, because he sent me the boundary in the GPX file, I knew where I could and where I couldn't hunt. So that was a cool thing down there. And then honestly, I did a lot of e-scouting ahead of time, ahead of the hunt, I should say. So I went in and I looked at all the ridges and I figured out different hikes that I wanted to do, just trying to be efficient. So if you're going to go on a long hike and spend the entire day trying to get to different glassing points that maybe you can't get to from the roads, it's like, all right, let's identify those glassing points. Let's use 3D to identify different areas of that particular ranch that we could set in glass new country. And then how do we string along those glassing points with a hike so we're not being inefficient and hiking, longer distances or up and down canyons a lot more than what we need to. So for there, I turn on 3D and I'm looking at ridge systems. Okay, I can park here, I can hike out this ridge, and there's 2 different good glassing points there. Maybe I do have to cross a canyon, but then I'm back on the other ridge and I'm going to string along different glassing points on that. So really trying to e-scout and just make more of like an efficient hunt plan instead of just getting there and figuring it out. So by doing that, I feel like we were able to start hunting right away more efficiently and not, I don't want to say waste, but in a lack of better terms, waste a couple of days just trying to get a lay of the land of like, where do we want to go? What do we want to do? All that work had been already predetermined, which was pretty cool.
Helps to make you more efficient with your time there. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And trip ended up being super awesome. I shot my first coos deer on the last day of the hunt, last full day of the hunt, I should say. So kind of brought it down to the wire. We went 3 for 4. Didn't see a lot of deer, but we saw some cool bucks and had a good time. I had never seen a coos deer before that hunt, so it was kind of a fun one to go from never seeing the species to hunting them and ultimately harvesting one on the last day. So it was pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's not one of my bucket list things to do.
Yep, I'm trying to scratch the bucket list items off.
Well, it seems like you're in a good place to do that. Hey, one other thing that I think is a super useful tool that onX provides is I had mentioned, jokingly early, gives you access to, private land ownership. Is I've talked to a couple people that have like shot a deer on public land and it's ran onto private land, and it gave them the ability so that they can, be like a hunter that people that own the private land like to hear from, where it's like, hey, here's what happened, shot it, ran on, it's on your property, here's like the whereabouts. It gives you the opportunity to call them and get permission to go on the land and recover that. And it makes for, at least in my opinion and what I've discovered, is it helps the private landowners, respect the hunters a lot more when you're kind of not just trying to sneak in, sneak off. And I get it. Like, you're up there, you're tired, like it's been like a long grind, you want to just go grab it. But I just think, just from a standpoint from somebody that's new to hunting, so I think it goes a long way to being able to reach out and contact a private landowner and get permission to go on the land and recover the animal. And from what I haven't experienced it myself. I've talked to 2 people that have done that, and it just makes like a good experience where like, hey, really appreciate you calling. Let me know, like, go ahead, go get it, and be done with it.
Yeah. No, totally. And honestly, there's been times where I have had to do that, but there's also been times where I've just tried to get access to private property and been met with, I would love to give you, or I would love to give you permission to come hunt this property, but my neighbors really don't like when people cross the fence and hunt their property. And last year we ran into a couple instances where that happened. And by me pulling out my phone and saying like, hey, I totally understand where you're coming from and your neighbors are coming from. I just want to let you know that based on this, and like actually showing them the property and where you're currently at their house, It's like, hey, with this, I know exactly where that boundary is. And if there's anywhere on your property that you don't want me on, maybe you've got cattle in a certain pasture or anything like that, I can mark it off, and just showing them like firsthand right on your phone, like you know the boundaries, you know where you're going, and you're not going to cross a fence that you don't know if you can cross. So that actually a few different times has changed the answer from sorry, no, I can't let you on my property to, oh, that's amazing. Yeah, no, you can certainly go on there. Just don't go over to this area because I've got cows in there or something. So that's also been pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, great advice. If you're not using Onyx, I don't know what you're doing. You should go download it. And if you're new to hunting, especially, I would encourage you. You guys have a free trial, I believe, going on right now as well. So if someone goes and downloads the app, you can get a free trial, hop in there, play around with it. Super, super cool tool. And it like, as you mentioned, Dylan, it's going to make you a more respected hunter when it comes to those private lands. Like you said, even just getting access to it. And that's a great tip to be able to show it. Like if you can be in person talking to them, like you pull it out and be like, show me where you don't want me to go. And then you can like map it out. And I think it goes a long way in showing that one, you respect their property, and also the game that you're chasing. So it may turn a no into a yes. Elevate your next adventure with blue coolers from Cata Sports, designed to keep your food and drinks ice cold no matter where the journey takes you. With top-tier insulation, rugged durability, and built-in wheels for easy transport, these coolers are the ultimate sidekick for all of your outdoor adventures. Best of all, they deliver unbeatable performance at a price that won't break the bank. Head on over to catasports.com and use promo code Ryan10 to save 10% off your order.
Yep. Yeah, and honestly, so many people, especially in the West, just hunt public land, right? And that's great. We also have some layers that help out with that. So in Montana, for example, we have a program called block management. In different states, they've got similar programs, but it is different. It's named and referred to differently. So Montana, for example, block management is a program that allows private landowners to put their property in this program. FWP then reimburse them based on either the number of hunters that go hunt their property or whatever they work out with FWP. But essentially what it does is it opens up a lot of really good opportunities for access on private land. So if you're afraid to go door knock, or if you're sick and tired of being told no, a lot of those block managements will allow you to go hunt their property. And there's two different ones. And we note this in the app. There's a type 1 and a type 2. If it's type 1, it's usually go sign in on a sign-in box, which we locate those in the app as well, and feel free to go hunting. Type 2, sometimes you have to apply for to be able to hunt them, or just give them a call and say, hey, is there anybody coming out this week? They might only allow 2 parties on their property at a given time, etc. But it opens up some cool opportunities. Again, if you're not hunting a lot of private, now you've got access to, maybe it's less hunted, maybe it's new into block management, maybe they had previously outfitted there. Lots of different opportunities there, but just one more way to look at the map and find an area where you can get away from the crowd.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's a great tool, and one you should definitely be using. And that's good to know as far as like on the private land. I hadn't even like dug that deep into it yet to be able to understand that block management. So had to spend some time digging into that personally here. Hey, shifting gears, Dylan, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, one thing I would urge everybody to do is there's so much that goes into the app, so many different layers, so much data, so many different GPS tools, etc., that when somebody downloads the app and they're doing a trial, or even maybe they've been a paying customer for many years, but they don't use it very much, go in and just like touch every button, turn every layer on, turn every layer off, see what it does to your map. You're not going to break anything. Feel free to poke around, and that's honestly the easiest way to learn is go tap every button, add a waypoint, delete a waypoint, do a line distance, delete that. Like just go wild in there. And especially if you're laying in bed late at night or getting ready for an upcoming hunt, like just go in there and turn layers on and off and see what you can do. And that's a super good way to just learn what is available and what's there to offer in the app.
That's a great tip. Hey, again, shifting, is there anything, well, before we move off this, is there anything else that you would share with the folks as far as using Onyx or something that may be beneficial to them?
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of it. Again, just use it. And the biggest thing that I continually get is like, yeah, I've used it. I love it. I use it all the time, but I don't know how to use it very well. Um, we also offer what we call App 101s. They're a webinar. If you go on our website and just type in Onyx Hunt Masterclasses or Onyx Hunt webinars, you'll find the page. And if you sign up for an App 101, we basically run down everything we have to offer as far as here's how to use these tools, here's how to look at wind and weather within the app, here's how to share a waypoint with a friend, etc. So we do a lot of cool stuff. Actually, right after this podcast, I'm jumping on a webinar where we are going to talk about Colorado mule deer hunting specifically and the changes with all of Colorado for this application season. So we do a lot of that type of content with our partners, but we also do some of the app 101. Here's how to use a product. And so I would urge folks, if they're trying to learn how to use it a little bit better, to sign up for one of those and ask a bunch of questions.
Perfect. And we'll make sure, guys, like if this is something you're interested in, we'll put all the link in the show notes. I'll track down that webinar link and we'll put that in there as well. And that's something I'm going to definitely spend some more time digging into myself to try and get a better understanding. I'm still trying to take down any type of big animal. So this is going to go a long way in getting that done. So appreciate it. Dylan, hey, I was talking a little bit about before. I want to chat and hear the story about that bull that you just took down, your archery bull in 2023. You mind sharing the story with folks? And I'll put the link to your Instagram, but you guys should see this thing. It's incredible bull.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was a fun one. That was probably, well, it was definitely my biggest bull to date. Definitely one of the most memorable hunts, but yeah, so that was a Montana archery bull. Again, I've been a Montana resident my whole life. One of the perks of being a Montana resident is you have some cool opportunities within the state to hunt, and especially if you bow hunt or if you're willing to bow hunt. So some of these areas are super hard to draw with a rifle. If you're archery hunting, you can draw them every other year, sometimes every year, depending. So it just lends some really cool hunt opportunities. Yeah, that particular bull, I remember that week started off pretty slow. Usually I can find out, get on elk fairly quickly. And that week was not the case. I think I went 2-3 days with, maybe hearing a bugle here or there, but it was just super slow compared to previous years. And one thing I always say is, going into every archery elk hunt, I am probably overconfident. I think I finally, at this point, have figured out. But for several years in a row, I was almost overconfident. It's like, yeah, I'm going to find these elk right away. I'll get in on them. I'll have some opportunities. Hopefully it's a bull I want to kill. And then like the first hour of the first day goes by and you're like, this is literally impossible. I don't know why I was so confident. It's been like an every year thing. So first couple days go by and don't really have much to go off of. One thing I found to be super helpful in my success is like just being in and close to elk. And then if you're in elk consistently, you don't have to make as risky and as careless of moves, I guess, to try and get in there and make it happen. But when you're not in elk and you're not really finding elk, it makes it exponentially more difficult, especially with a bow, because when you do find elk at that point, you have to, in my opinion, kind of press the envelope and maybe do things that you normally wouldn't otherwise do to make it happen, because you might only get one opportunity the entire archery season. But yeah, so this was the last day of the hunt. So I'm skipping forward quite a bit there, but the last day of the hunt, it was super windy, which can be a blessing if you know where elk are, because then it covers up a lot of your noise sneaking into those elk and getting within archery range. And also you don't have to worry about the wind switching when you have a stiff 20 mile an hour wind. You don't get the sneaking up to 100 yards and everything's good. And then all of a sudden the wind switches and you hear, or you feel the wind on the back of your neck and you go, uh-oh. So it is nice if you know where elk are. If you don't know where elk are, it makes it tough because now hearing bugles is exponentially harder as well. So the last morning of the hunt, I got up extra early. I remember, I think I got to this point where I like to glass and listen for bugles, half an hour or 45 minutes before daylight. Just if I can hear a bugle in the dark, I've got a good vantage point of how I'm going to go attack it from there. So if I hear a bugle, I'll pull out the app and figure out roughly where that bugle is and what the wind is doing and how I can get as close as possible to those elk at first light. That's how I killed a bull in the same area the year prior. Is I kind of just stalked his bugle throughout the dark, like the hour leading up to sunup. And when the sun rose, I was, I think, 50 or 60 yards from that bull, just using the app and the topography to figure out, okay, here's where they are. I can get from here across this opening without being seen or bumping elk at this point. And so kind of merging two stories in one here, but that's how I killed that bull is using the app in the dark. I couldn't see my surroundings, but I knew exactly where that bull was bugling from. And I think I shot that bull, which is sitting right next to me here. I think like 5 or 6 minutes after legal shooting light. It was still pretty gray light when I shot that bull at like 43 yards. So fast forward to the next year, I got up to a point and I was listening and I was going to glass for elk once it got light, and just there's no way I was going to hear an elk unless it was 150, 200 yards from me. It was way too windy. The night before, I knew roughly which way a herd of elk was headed, so I kind of just slowly started making my way toward that direction, hoping that they would feed back to the same area to bed. So what I would do is, and again, this is probably an hour before sunup at this point, but I'd walk 50, 75 yards, and I would just stand there and listen. I'm trying to remember exactly how long. It kind of depended on like the area, if I would stay there for a while or if I would sit and listen for 2 minutes and keep walking. But essentially I made it like a mile or so in the dark, and all of a sudden I heard a bugle, and it was like so far off that it was one of those, did I really hear it or did I want to hear it type deals. So I kept inching in and, would hike another 50, 75 yards, stop, listen, and kept hearing these bugles. So I got to a point where and at this point, sun is starting to come up. It's dark still, but it's almost shooting light. And I got into a point where I know elk like to bed in an area that was behind me, and then they were all bugling out in front of me, probably 200-300 yards at that point. And so I kind of set up just waiting for them to make a move so I could then be reactive a little bit. And I think, probably an hour went by, and still hadn't seen any elk. So they kind of just holed up where they were. So talking again about just making decisions and being a little bit risky, it was the last day, and I knew I kind of had to just go for it. If I didn't kill a bull that morning, it was going to be really unlikely I was going to kill one that evening, based on where they were at and just what was going on. So I had to cross a couple big openings, like 100, 150 yard wide open areas with no topography. But I knew if I could do it that I would get pretty close. So I did one of them, and I was on the backside of a butte, and I peeked over and I saw a couple cows that were probably 80, 90 yards ahead of me. They were in the wide open, and it was pretty tough. Like all these elk were bedded down in this bowl. And what it was two different herds. And so there were two herd bulls that were constantly bugling back and forth at each other, which was super helpful because in the previous days, what would happen is I would hear a few bugles in the morning and then they would shut up. So if you didn't find them within the first 30, 45 minutes, you're resorting to glassing them up, which is a lot harder. Yeah. Yep. A lot harder. Yeah. But this particular day, two big herds were together, and their herds were bedded within like 100 yards of each other. So those two herd bulls were fired up and constantly bugling back and forth. And at one point I heard them fighting and stuff, and just kept things going, which helped me out a ton. And so I kind of slipped back, made a big loop around, And as I was creeping up, I dropped my pack and I was like, if I can get 30 yards up on this knob, I should be able to at least be within range. I didn't know if I'd see the bull or not, but I knew based on where he was bugling, I should be within archery range. And about that time, I looked to my right, and there was two calves, I remember plain as day, that were in the wide open. And at this point, I'm in the wide open, and they're like 30 yards from me, just staring right at me. And I, kind of got caught, obviously, and had my bow in one hand, had an arrow knocked, and I looked over, and there was like a fence line, and they ran down the fence line back toward the herd, just mewing, going crazy. And at that point, I basically was like, if I don't get up there, like they're going to blow the herd up. They're going to know something's going on here. I need to get up there. So I went from like tiptoeing, just being super slow and methodical, trying to get up there, to I think I ran the last 20 yards to the top of the hill, because I was like, once they get to that herd, they're going to be on alert. And if I'm not up there, I'm not going to get it done. Fortunate enough for me, though, because they were calves, I think the rest of the elk weren't quite, I don't know if they just didn't trust them as much or what, but it was definitely, they reacted differently than they would have if a bull or a couple cows were there and ran into the herd
They
and
came running
frantically
in there
were.
like, these kids.
Yeah, seriously, because there was a couple cows that were on alert, like they stood up and they were looking around, but it was not, wasn't as dramatic as what I thought it should have been, let's just say.
Yeah.
But so I got up there, and there was a cow that was pretty alert, and I ranged her. And about that time, I think she was like 65 or 60 yards, something like that. And I still hadn't seen the bull, but about that time, he chuckled down a little bit closer and down to the left of where that cow was. And I remember looking through the trees, and I couldn't see that it was a bull, but I could see the elk was, as he was chuckling, I could tell it was him just based on his diaphragm and how the elk was moving. But all I could see on that bull, there was I don't know, beach ball size opening in a bunch of trees, and all I could see was the crease of the shoulder, and then literally the whole opening was right where his lungs were. And so I didn't know if it was a herd bull, I didn't know if it was a satellite bull, I didn't know if it was a spike. I mean, based on the chuckle and how I had listened to that bull, I thought it was a herd bull, but to be completely honest with you, I didn't know exactly which bull it was. And the herd was getting a little antsy, so I ranged, drew. As I drew, I definitely, I was settling the pin, but I was also really being aware of where that opening was, where that gap was, and am I going to hit a tree on the way? Is my arc going to hit a tree? Felt really good about it. So I squeezed through the shot, watched the arrow go through the bull and then kind of bury in the ground behind him. I'm shooting a lighted knock, so it's super easy and really nice to see exactly where I hit. And then from there, the bull kind of blew up and took off and ran through the trees for a little ways. And then he kind of circled around the hill, at this point, probably 80, 90, 100 yards from me, somewhere in there. And then I actually watched him crash. And when he crashed, I was like, yeah, that's a heck of a bull. I knew it was a good bull, but it happened so quickly. I still didn't really know at that point. That was obviously super cool. But one of the things I remember specifically about the hunt is after I shot that bull, the herd didn't really know quite what happened. They kind of blew up a little bit, but the other herd bull was there still bugling and rounding up cows and stuff. And so after I shot that bull, I watched him crash, and then several elk followed through, and I was able to sit there and watch just a bunch of different elk in that same country, and that herd bull kind of came out and stuff, and it was just a super cool experience at that point.
That's incredible. So after you shot him, you watched him crash, so you knew it was one of the bigger bulls that you had been kind of eyeing for, hoping to get to, right?
Yep, I did. But even then, up until I walked up to him, I didn't really know. I was like, yeah, he's a mature herd bull, and I was super happy. I did not know that was my best bull by far until I walked up there, and yeah, every step closer I got to that bull, he got bigger and bigger.
Yeah. Oh, really? Yes. Yeah, so you're
yeah, because I could see him through the trees and everything, but until I really got up on him, I didn't exactly know what he was. But yeah, I just kept walking closer and closer, and I was like, man, that's a heck of a bull. And then I'd go another 10 yards. I'm like, holy cows, he's he's bigger than I even thought. And then when I got up there and got my hands on him, it was like, yeah, this is my biggest bull by far. It was a super cool hunt, and especially to happen on the last day. You never really wish that they happen on the last day, but when they do, it's kind of extra special when it works out that way.
That's amazing. Well, it's a heck of a bull and amazing story. I mean, it's incredible, like the effort that is put into it. If people haven't been out there and done it, I mean, like everything that you had to go through, like you said, like going out in the dark, trying to go through like, you know, this opening and and then getting busted, but then having it still not completely bust you because like the rest of the herd was like, yeah, something's up, but it's, you know, and then you take those risks, like you said, sprinting up the mountain, going up to get on that ridge where you can get down. And would you say it was about a 65-yard shot?
He ended up being about 50. That Cali range was a little bit further, 50 to 52,
Okay.
somewhere in there. But yeah, there was there were so many things that day that I wouldn't say shouldn't have gone right, but could have gone either way. You know, I could have easily have gotten caught crossing one of those two big openings. And at one point I thought I did, but they kind of skirted around me. There's just so many things that, you know, couldn't have worked out or statistically shouldn't have worked out in my favor. Yeah, when it all came together, it was like, how did that happen?
Meant to be, man. Meant to be.
Yep,
Well, that's incredible.
absolutely.
When you went out, would you have a big group that was with you? Was this a solo hunt that you had done?
So kind of the way I typically like to hunt is I like to camp with folks. So my dad was there, my uncle was there, and then I'm just a more efficient hunter, archery hunter when I'm by myself. Now, if you're in some thick, you know, Western Montana or Idaho or whatever country where you have to call bulls in, it's obviously nice to have a caller with you as well and then kind of rotate and go back and forth. But if you're spot and stalking or, you know, stalking bugles and doing it that way, a lot of times it's just flat easier to be by yourself. You're making half the amount of noise, your scent is less, and whatnot. So I was with my dad and uncle. They were hunting different areas of where we were, and then I was solo when I shot the bull. So it's always kind of a win-win too then, because I found some cell service and called them, told them we got a bull down, and they were there to help pack meat by the time I was almost done cutting it. So it's a win-win.
That's awesome. How'd they do? Were they able to tag out?
Nope, did not tag out that year. You know, had some super close encounters, but I was the only one that year to tag out. But yeah, it was cool. Being the last day, it was a little bit rushed to get everything out and also get packed up and head home. But sure made the drive home with a big elk, big bull in the back, a little bit more enjoyable.
Oh, heck yeah. That's awesome. Well, Dylan, hey, man, I really appreciate your time. So I'm primarily doing archery. I mean, I'm not primarily, that's all I'm doing is archery. But for people that are new to it, is there just any advice that you would just give them? I mean, we talk a lot about just enjoying the journey and the process, and I've learned so much, and I just feel like I'm constantly getting better. But is there anything that you've discovered that you'd like to leave with the folks that may be newer to hunting to help them have a good experience?
Yeah, definitely. There's so much, right? But for me anyways, I'll kind of stick to archery since that's what we've been talking about a little bit, is I remember my early days of archery where it felt so impossible. It was just every year, you know, failed. And at the time I thought it was a failure because I didn't shoot an elk. I also was learning so much at the time that my first couple of bulls, I joked that I accidentally killed them. Didn't really have, you know, the knowledge and what I have now, and things just kind of honestly fell into my lap. And my first bull, I remember walked into 8 yards and was broadside bugling and was basically like, shoot me right here. It was the easiest elk I've ever killed. And had it not have been the easiest elk I've ever killed, I don't think I would have killed him. And it's just so many years of not punching a tag that it just seemed impossible. And then kind of get a gimme on that one. And it's like, all right, so what did I do on that particular year that was different? How did I make that happen when he did come in and give me an easy opportunity? And then just learning year after year. So I would just say the biggest thing is like, don't get discouraged if you don't go out your very first year with a bow and shoot a bull, because statistically you shouldn't. There's a lot of people that every year are trying to get their first bull with bow or first whatever they're hunting. Just use those opportunities as a learning experience and enjoy the process. One of the things when I was younger that I probably wasn't doing enough is enjoying the whole process. And all I wanted to do was shoot a bull with my bow. Like I wanted that so bad that finally I figured it out. And the last few years have been really successful and lucky in that sense. But yeah, just enjoy the entire process. Even if you go and hear your first bugle or get within 100 yards of your first elk, like that's a win, and celebrate that.
Awesome. Yeah, one of the things that I've started to do is, just because we do have our cell phones on us 24/7, is I just like open up the notes app and I just take myself a little note, because I feel like when I try and do it after the fact, when I get back home, like to use what was it, Roger Clemens' term, that I misremember what had happened. But just taking the time, if there's a situation you get busted or you see something happening, like pull your phone out, or if you got a pen and paper with you, pull it out, just scratch down some notes. Because when I started doing that, I feel like that's where I've started to have like more success and just start to understand like the game a little bit better. So yeah.
I mean, tying it into the hunt app too, you could also drop a waypoint, and maybe your notes waypoint color is blue or something, right? And drop a waypoint, make it that color, and then in the notes be like, okay, right here I had a bull at, I know we're constantly talking about archery and elk hunting here, but like it applies to everything else. But right here I had a bull at 70 yards bedded, and here's what I did, here's what I wish I would have done, and now you've got it tied to a specific spot and waypoint. You can drop notes, take pictures, and all that stuff right within in the hunt app as well.
Awesome. Great advice. Dylan, appreciate the time, appreciate the knowledge that you shared with us. You guys make sure to, go check the show notes. Onyx is going to be hard to find, but we'll put some links in there to some of those webinars and that for folks to find, and also put a link in there for people to follow you, Dylan.
Awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate the time and getting to meet you, and I'm sure it won't be our last time on a podcast together. So thank you.
Yeah. No, probably not. Appreciate it. Okay, stay safe. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Hunt Stealth Podcast. Hey, I have a favor to ask. If you would and you enjoy this podcast, head on over to wherever you consume it and leave us a review. It's going to help us get this pumped out to more people that might be interested in hearing podcasts like this.